A small metal object rests deep within million-year-old rock. This video explores 31 spectacular artifacts found in places they absolutely should not be. Discoveries that challenge the very foundations of history. By the end, you will see the human story not as a straight line, but as a tapestry filled with astonishing gaps and lost chapters. How did an intricate computer exist 2,000 years ago? And why does a map depict a continent hidden under ice for millennia? What single assumption about the past are you most willing to question? These artifacts have a name, out-of-place artifacts, or OOPArts for short. They are the ultimate historical puzzles, objects that defy all logical explanation for their time and place. Imagine a modern smartphone discovered sealed inside a pharaoh's tomb, or a jet engine component found within a medieval castle wall. That is the scale of the confusion these items create. They are not merely old, they are impossibly advanced or geographically misplaced, appearing in the archaeological record like a scene from a science fiction story. For centuries, these discoveries have been made by both careful archaeologists and lucky amateurs, often buried in deep rock layers, locked in ancient ice, or resting on forgotten seabeds. Each one is a direct challenge to the stories we tell ourselves about human progress. The official explanations sometimes feel strained, suggesting they are simple hoaxes or misidentified natural formations. But what if they are not? What if these objects are genuine relics of something much more profound? They whisper of civilizations that rose and fell long before our recorded history began, cultures that may have possessed knowledge we are only now rediscovering. Some even dare to speculate about contact with other worlds, though that remains the most controversial of all possibilities. To even consider these ideas requires an open mind, a willingness to question the textbooks and look at the evidence with fresh eyes. As we begin our journey through 31 of the most spectacular examples, hold onto that sense of wonder. Each item we uncover tells a story that directly contradicts what we thought we knew, and the first one on our list sets the stage for everything that follows. The Antikythera Mechanism was not found in a dusty tomb or a forgotten temple, but in the silent darkness of a shipwreck, resting on the seabed for over 2,000 years. When sponge divers first brought up the corroded lumps of bronze and wood in 1901, they had no idea they were holding the key to rewriting ancient history. The object looked like a lump of rock, but inside was the most sophisticated device the classical world has ever yielded. It is a complex clockwork of at least 30 interlocking bronze gears, housed in a wooden case no larger than a shoebox. This was not a simple calendar or a decorative ornament. It was a precision instrument of astounding complexity, a machine for calculating the movements of the cosmos itself. For decades, its true purpose remained a mystery, obscured by corrosion and the limits of technology. It was only with the advent of advanced X-ray and surface imaging in the 21st century that researchers like Dr. Tony Freeth and his team could finally peer inside. What they found was breathtaking. The device could predict the positions of the sun, the moon, and the known planets. It could forecast lunar and solar eclipses, and it even tracked the 4-year cycle of the Olympic Games. This was not just a tool for farmers or sailors. This was a product of a highly advanced scientific culture, an analog computer built on a foundation of deep astronomical knowledge and masterful engineering. Its existence in the 2nd century before the Common Era is utterly staggering. Nothing of comparable mechanical sophistication would appear again until the astronomical clocks of medieval Europe, more than 1,000 years later. So how did such a technological marvel simply vanish from the historical record? Its discovery suggests a hidden school of Greek engineers and thinkers, a lineage of technical knowledge that was somehow lost to time, perhaps in the fires of war or the slow collapse of an empire. The Antikythera Mechanism stands as a ghost in the machine of history, a single, surviving whisper of a level of technological achievement we never knew existed. It forces us to ask a profound question. If this one device survived by pure chance, what other wonders were lost forever, leaving no trace for the history books to record? The whispers of lost technology do not end with complex gears in the sea. A much simpler, yet equally baffling, object was unearthed from the dry soil outside Baghdad. It appears utterly mundane at first glance, a simple terracotta jar about the size of a man's fist. But inside this unassuming pot, archaeologists found a rolled copper sheet, an iron rod, and evidence of an asphalt stopper that once sealed it shut. Dated to the Parthian period, roughly 2,000 years ago, this assembly is known as the Baghdad Battery. Its true purpose remains one of history's most electrifying mysteries. When the jar was replicated and filled with an acidic electrolyte, something remarkable happened. Common substances like vinegar or grape juice, which would have been readily available at the time, caused the device to produce a small but measurable electric current. The simple chemistry of the acidic liquid reacting with the two different metals generated about 1 volt of electricity. This is not enough to power a light bulb, but it is a genuine electrochemical reaction. The immediate question is, what could an ancient civilization possibly have needed with a tiny trickle of electricity? Some researchers propose it was used for electroplating, to deposit a thin layer of gold or silver onto other metal objects, a practice known from the region. Others suggest a more mystical application, perhaps using the subtle tingle of current in religious rituals to create a sense of divine power, or even for rudimentary medical treatments, a form of ancient pain relief. The mainstream academic view often leans toward it being a storage jar for sacred scrolls, with the metal components merely being the container. But this explanation feels incomplete, ignoring the fundamental electrochemical property of the specific materials chosen. Why use two different metals in a configuration that perfectly creates a galvanic cell if that was not the intent? The existence of the Baghdad Battery, whether a tool, a toy, or a temple object, fundamentally challenges the established timeline of human discovery. We are taught that the principles of electricity were first properly understood by figures like Alessandro Volta in the late 18th century. Yet here is tangible proof that the basic concept of a battery may have been understood and implemented centuries, even a millennium before. It forces us to reconsider the scope of practical experimentation in the ancient world. How many other simple, profound discoveries were made and then forgotten, their secrets buried with the civilizations that created them? This small pot is a powerful jolt to our historical narrative, a quiet spark of genius waiting in the dust for 2,000 years. From a simple jar capable of producing a spark, we journey to an object that seems to be a spark plug itself, yet one found in a context so impossible it defies all reason. In 1961, 3 rockhound enthusiasts were searching for geodes in California's Coso Mountains. They cracked open what appeared to be a perfectly ordinary, lumpy stone, expecting to find the typical crystalline interior. Instead, they found something utterly baffling. Embedded firmly within the solid rock was a mechanical object. At its center was a ceramic cylinder surrounding a magnetic metal rod, all encased within a hardened hexagonal shell of clay and pebbles. To any modern eye, it looked unmistakably like a spark plug from an early 20th century automobile or engine. The immediate and obvious question was, How could a man-made object from the last 100 years become completely sealed inside a rock that took nature hundreds of thousands of years to form? The geode was subjected to analysis, and the surrounding material was dated, with some estimates suggesting it could be 500,000 years old. This single finding catapulted the object from a curious oddity into a full-blown historical paradox. If the dating was correct, this artifact was buried in stone long before modern humans even walked the earth. The components themselves tell a story of precise engineering. The ceramic insulator, the metallic conductor, the overall assembly, all point to a device designed to manage a high-voltage electrical spark. This was not a natural formation that just happened to look like a machine part. It was a complex composite of manufactured materials. Skeptics proposed a more conventional explanation, suggesting it was simply a mining tool from the area's 19th century rush, perhaps a champion spark plug from the 1920s that somehow became coated in hardening mineral mud. They argue that the dating methods, which measured the rock layer that had formed around the object, could be misleading, as minerals can accumulate surprisingly quickly under the right conditions. Yet for those who study it, this explanation feels insufficient. The object appeared to be fully fossilized, integrated into the geode itself, not merely stuck in a recent concretion. The Coso Artifact perfectly captures the central conflict that defines every out-of-place artifact. Is it genuine proof of something extraordinary, a relic from a lost advanced civilization, or even a visitor from another time, left behind and slowly encased in stone? Or is it merely a case of mistaken identity, a modern item that ended up in an ancient-looking setting, fooling our desire to see mystery in the mundane? This is the core dilemma, forcing us to constantly question not only the evidence itself, but also our own interpretations. It challenges the very methods we use to understand the past, reminding us that sometimes the story an object tells is simply too incredible to accept and too compelling to ignore. A hammer should not be found inside solid rock, yet in 1936, that is exactly what happened along the banks of the Red Creek near London, Texas. A couple walking along the waterway noticed a curious piece of rock with what looked like a piece of wood protruding from it. When they cracked the stone open, they discovered a perfectly formed iron hammerhead, still attached to its handle, completely encased within. This was not just any rock, it was a concretion from the Cretaceous rock layer, a geological formation reliably dated to well over 100 million years old. This is a time when dinosaurs like Tyrannosaurus rex roamed the Earth, a time so distant that the very continents were in different positions. According to everything we know, no humans existed, let alone a species capable of forging iron. The hammer itself only deepened the mystery. The wooden handle had undergone a process called coalification, turning it partly to coal, a transformation that speaks of immense age and pressure. Even more startling, the iron head was analyzed and found to be of an exceptional purity, with an almost complete lack of the impurities and slag common in modern steel production. This was not a tool dropped by a 19th century prospector. It was a high-quality, expertly crafted object. How could it possibly be sealed inside a rock that formed when giant reptiles were the planet's dominant life form? Geologists have proposed that the hammer was not truly inside the ancient rock, but that mineral-rich water slowly deposited layers around it, creating a hard, rock-like nodule in a much shorter period. They argue the object is likely a miner's hammer from the 1800s, and the concretion process made it appear far older than it really is. Yet this explanation struggles with the documented context of its discovery within a well-studied Cretaceous stratum and the unique metallurgy of the iron itself. The London hammer presents us with a stark and simple choice: Either our understanding of geological processes is fundamentally flawed, and minerals can congeal around objects with a speed that mimics millions of years, or our timeline of life on this planet is catastrophically wrong. If this tool is genuine, it means an intelligent, tool-making species was walking the earth and working metal in an era we reserve for prehistoric monsters. It forces a question that shakes the foundations of anthropology. Could entire civilizations have risen and fallen, leaving behind only the rarest, most durable of their artifacts, their existence erased by the slow, grinding gears of geological time? The hammer remains a silent, stubborn challenge to our deepest assumptions about our own past. Buried in the sands of an Egyptian tomb for over 2,000 years, a small wooden artifact whispers of the sky. Known as the Saqqara Bird, this delicate model was discovered in 1898, carefully placed alongside the dead. To the archaeologists who found it, it was simply a stylized bird, perhaps a ritual object or a child's plaything. Its form is sleek, with a clear fuselage, two gracefully swept wings, and a distinct vertical tail fin that looks nothing like the legs or feathers of a real bird. It is an object that seems to yearn for flight. For decades, it remained a minor curiosity in the Cairo Museum, a footnote in the vast catalogue of Egyptian funerary goods. Then, in the modern era, people who understood the principles of aerodynamics looked at it with fresh eyes. They saw not a bird, but an aircraft. Aviation engineers and historians have pointed out that the Saqqara Bird's design is fundamentally aerodynamic. Its wings are shaped to provide lift, and that vertical tail fin is crucial for stability in flight, a feature that real birds simply do not possess. When exact replicas were built and tested, the results were startling. The little model, when launched with a slight push, could glide through the air for considerable distances with perfect balance. It was not merely falling, it was flying. This performance suggests its original creator possessed more than just artistic skill. They held an intuitive, or perhaps even a studied, understanding of basic flight physics. This single piece of carved wood ignites a profound debate. Was it merely a lucky guess, a beautiful shape that coincidentally mirrors the principles that would not be formally understood for another 2 millennia? Or does it represent a fragment of lost knowledge, a glimpse into a time when ancient minds were experimenting with the very idea of human flight? The mainstream view holds firm that it is a bird, perhaps a falcon representing the god Horus. Yet the falcon hypothesis fails to fully explain the purpose of that distinct, non-ornamental tail stabilizer. The Saqqara Bird does not necessarily prove the Egyptians had airplanes, but it powerfully suggests the seeds of the idea were there. It stands as a testament to the innovative human spirit, a physical question mark that challenges our arrogance about being the first to dream of soaring. If a culture could conceive of a functional glider 200 years before the Common Era, what other intellectual revolutions have been lost, their blueprints crumbled to dust and their concepts forgotten? This artifact is not just a model, it is a catalyst, pushing us to re-examine every ancient curiosity for hidden genius. Deep within a remote mountain cave, a discovery was made that would fuel one of the most controversial legends of the ancient world. In 1938, a Chinese archaeologist named Kai Pu-te was exploring the Bayan Kararula Mountains near the border of Tibet. There, in a high-altitude cave system, he and his team found something utterly unexpected. Arranged in neat rows along the cave floor were hundreds of stone discs, each about a foot across with a perfectly circular hole in the center. At first glance, they resembled primitive millstones or ritual objects. But a closer look revealed their true mystery. Each disc was carved with a fine, continuous spiral groove that, upon magnification, was found to be composed of a series of minuscule, unknown hieroglyphic characters. They were like stone phonograph records waiting to be read. The local tribespeople, the Dropa, supposedly held these stones as sacred relics of their ancestors. The story that emerged from the inscriptions, once they were allegedly translated years later by a Russian linguist, was nothing short of astonishing. The glyphs told of a spacecraft that crash-landed in the mountains 12,000 years ago. The survivors, a people who called themselves the Dropa, could not repair their vessel and were stranded on Earth, eventually integrating with the local human population. The tale grew even stranger with claims of scientific analysis. Some researchers asserted that the discs were found to contain high levels of cobalt and other metallic elements, as if the stone itself had been somehow treated or alloyed, a process that seems impossible for a Neolithic culture. Mainstream archaeology has long since dismissed the Dropa stones. Many experts believe the entire narrative is an elaborate hoax, a web of misrepresented facts and outright fiction woven in the mid-20th century. The discs themselves, they argue, are likely common-buy discs, ancient Chinese ritual artifacts, and the story of the inscriptions and their translation cannot be verified through any credible academic channels. The original discs have seemingly vanished, leaving behind only photographs and second-hand accounts. Yet, why does this particular legend hold such power? It taps into a fundamental human question about our origins and the possibility that we are not alone. The Dropa stones challenge us not necessarily to believe in ancient astronauts, but to understand the powerful allure of such stories. They exist in a shadowy realm between fact and folklore, a place where a genuine archaeological find can be transformed by imagination and desire into a cosmic mystery. This forces a difficult balance, a need for rigorous skepticism to separate truth from fantasy, while still maintaining the open-mindedness to recognize that some of our past may be far stranger than any textbook could ever contain. If a story can persist for decades without a shred of solid evidence, what does that say about our own deep-seated need for wonder, for a history filled with stars? From the cosmic mystery of the Dropa stones, we descend into a riverbed in Peru, where another cache of engraved stones presents a puzzle just as profound. In the 1960s, a local physician named Dr. Javier Cabrera was given a small, engraved stone as a paperweight. This single gift would blossom into an obsession, leading him to amass a collection of over 15,000 similar stones, all sourced from the Ica region. These are not simple pebbles, they are substantial andesite rocks, a hard volcanic stone notoriously difficult to carve. Each one is covered in intricate, fine-line engravings that depict scenes that should not exist. One moment you see a man battling a triceratops, the next you observe a detailed diagram of a heart transplant, complete with what appear to be surgical tools. Other stones show celestial charts with Earth positioned next to unknown planets, and humans using telescopes to gaze at the stars. The sheer volume and variety of the images is overwhelming, creating a chaotic library of the impossible. If these stones are authentic artifacts from a pre-Columbian culture, they would completely shatter our understanding of ancient human knowledge. They suggest a civilization that not only coexisted with dinosaurs, but had also mastered advanced medicine and possessed a sophisticated understanding of astronomy. The implications are staggering, pointing to a lost epoch of human history where science and nature were understood in ways we can barely comprehend. The official explanation, however, is far more mundane. Skeptics point directly to the local farmers who, when questioned, admitted to creating the stones themselves. They used modern engraving tools and then aged the stones by baking them in donkey dung to create an ancient-looking patina. For mainstream archaeology, this confession is the final word, closing the case as an elaborate, if lucrative, hoax. Yet some researchers refuse to dismiss them entirely. They argue that the sheer number of stones, the consistency of the artistic style across the entire collection, and the depth of the engravings, which show wear patterns that suggest genuine age, cannot be so easily explained away. Could a few uneducated farmers have conceived of such a vast and internally consistent narrative, one that includes accurate depictions of dinosaur physiology that were only being confirmed by paleontology at the same time the stones were emerging? The enigma of the Ica stones is not really about whether they are real or fake. It is about what their existence, in either case, reveals about us. If they are forgeries, they represent a brilliant, cynical exploitation of our desire for a more mysterious past. If they are genuine, they are a direct challenge to every historical timeline we hold dear. They force a confrontation between our need for verified fact and our deep-seated longing for a world where the impossible becomes tangible, a world where the past is as wild and unexplored as the future. A map drawn in 1513 should not contain geographical knowledge that was impossible for its time. Yet the Piri Reis Map, compiled by the Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis, does exactly that. Discovered in 1929 in the Topkapi Palace in Istanbul, this fragment of a larger world chart is a masterpiece of medieval Islamic cartography. But its true mystery lies not in what it shows of the known 16th century world, but in the impossible coastlines it depicts with startling accuracy. The map correctly shows the eastern coast of South America, a feat in itself. More incredibly, it portrays a vast landmass to the south, a continent we now call Antarctica. The problem is, Antarctica was not officially discovered by European explorers until 1820. Even more baffling, the map shows this southern land with detailed, ice-free coastlines, mountains, and rivers, a geography that has been buried under miles of ice for at least 12,000 years. How could an Ottoman admiral in the 1500s have known this? Piri Reis himself provided a clue in his own marginal notes. He wrote that he compiled his map from many source charts, including what he called the maps of the ancients, and even referenced a map used by Christopher Columbus. This admission suggests he was working from a library of far older, now lost cartographic knowledge. The stunning precision of the map's longitudes has led researchers like Professor Charles Hapgood to propose a radical theory. He argued that the original source maps were created by a highly advanced global seafaring civilization, one capable of sophisticated spherical trigonometry and accurate navigation thousands of years before the Greeks. The Minoans, known for their maritime prowess, are one candidate. More speculatively, some point to the legend of Atlantis. Mainstream scholars offer a different interpretation. They suggest that the landmass identified as Antarctica is actually a distorted version of the southern tip of South America, or a hypothetical great southern continent that cartographers had long believed must exist to balance the northern landmasses. They argue that the apparent accuracy is a coincidence born of sketchy reports and imaginative filling in of blank spaces on the globe. Yet this explanation struggles with the specific, non-generalized contours of the Antarctic coastline, which in some areas align remarkably well with subglacial surveys of the continent's actual land beneath the ice. The Piri Reis Map is more than a historical curiosity. It is a ghost of a lost atlas. It forces us to confront the possibility that human history is punctuated by cycles of discovery and profound forgetting. What civilization could have sailed the globe and mapped it with such precision, only to vanish so completely that their knowledge survived only as fragments in a medieval document? This map charts a course not just across oceans, but directly into the heart of our greatest historical unknowns, a silent testament to explorers whose names and nations are lost to time. A single silver coin, no larger than a thumbnail, was unearthed from a shell heap in Maine. This was no ordinary artifact, but a Norse penny minted during the reign of King Olaf Kyrre, a Scandinavian ruler of the 11th century. Its very existence in that New England soil is a quiet revolution. Found in 1957 at a well-documented Native American settlement known as the Goddard Site, the coin was nestled within a prehistoric shell midden, a trash heap that had accumulated over generations. The dating of the surrounding layers placed it there centuries before Christopher Columbus ever set sail. This tiny piece of stamped silver is one of the most compelling pieces of physical evidence for pre-Columbian transatlantic contact. It directly corroborates the Icelandic sagas, epic tales of Norse explorers like Leif Erikson who sailed west and established a fleeting settlement they called Vinland. The sagas were long considered semi-mythical, but the discovery of the Viking site at Elance Ox Meadows in Newfoundland in the 1960s proved they were based in truth. The Maine Penny, found just a few years earlier, fits perfectly into this newly emerging map. It suggests that Norse exploration, or at least the reach of their trade goods, extended much further south than their known Canadian outposts. Yet the story is not so simple. Many archaeologists propose a less direct explanation. They argue that the coin likely arrived not from a Norse longship landing in Maine, but through extensive indigenous trade networks that crisscrossed North America. A Viking object, perhaps left behind in Newfoundland, could have been traded from hand to hand, tribe to tribe, over hundreds of miles and many decades, until it finally came to rest in that shell heap. This theory turns the coin from evidence of a direct encounter into a symbol of something equally profound: the vast, interconnected world that existed in the Americas long before European colonization. Whether it fell from a Norseman's purse or arrived as a curious trinket in a complex trade system, the Maine Penny irrevocably expands our view of the ancient world. It tells a story not of isolation, but of unexpected and early global connections. This small piece of currency carries the immense weight of a rewritten narrative, proving that the threads of human contact were woven across oceans far earlier than our history books ever dared to suggest. Another metal object defies the timeline, this one discovered not in rock but in ancient earth. In 1974, construction workers digging a trench along the Mureș River in Aiud, Romania, unearthed something completely unexpected. Buried deep in a layer of sediment alongside the massive bones of a mastodon was a wedge-shaped object made of metal. It was clearly worked by intelligent hands, but its context was impossible. The geological stratum was from the Pleistocene epoch, a time more than 10,000 years in the past. Initial analysis revealed the metal was not iron or bronze, but an alloy composed primarily of aluminum. This finding sent shockwaves through the small community of researchers who studied it. The industrial production of aluminum requires a complex electrochemical process called electrolysis, a technology that was not developed until the 1880s. To find a refined, manufactured piece of it in a layer of earth that predates human civilization by millennia is a paradox that cuts to the very core of archaeology. The object itself is heavy and strangely shaped, with what appear to be purposeful concavities and markings, as if it was part of a larger mechanical assembly. Further laboratory analysis only deepened the mystery. The wedge was found to be composed of 12 different metallic elements, a complex alloy that suggests sophisticated knowledge of metallurgy, not a simple, naturally occurring nugget of metal. How could such a thing exist? The most common skeptical explanation is that it is a piece of modern machinery, perhaps a tooth from an excavator bucket or a fragment from a World War II aircraft that somehow worked its way down into the older layers, a process known as intrusive burial. This is a known phenomenon in archaeology, where younger objects can be displaced downward through animal burrows, root action, or human error. Yet, those who have handled the object argue its condition and the clear context of its discovery alongside unmistakably ancient mastodon bones make this explanation feel convenient rather than conclusive. The Aiud Wedge presents us with a stark choice. It either represents a catastrophic error in our understanding of the site's geology, or it is genuine evidence that forces a complete re-evaluation of technological history. If it is authentic, it means that a culture, lost to us now, had not only discovered aluminum but had mastered the incredibly complex process of smelting and alloying it at a time when humanity was supposedly living in the Stone Age. This single artifact challenges the linear progression we assign to human innovation, suggesting that advanced knowledge can appear, flourish, and vanish, leaving behind only the most durable and puzzling of fragments. A slab of gray stone, half buried in the roots of a Minnesota poplar tree, tells a story that should not exist. In 1898, a Swedish immigrant farmer named Olof Öhman was clearing his land when he found it, a 200-pound tablet of grey-wacky rock intricately carved with strange, angular letters. When scholars finally translated the runic inscription, the message was breathtaking. It spoke of a party of 8 Goths or Swedes and 22 Norwegians on an exploration journey from Vinland. The carving described a tragic event, a day of horror where 10 men were red with blood and dead far from their ships. Most astonishingly, it was dated the year 1362. This was 2 centuries after the Viking settlement at Elland's Ox Meadows was abandoned, and a full 130 years before Columbus sailed. If true, the Kensington Runestone did not just suggest a brief Norse visit. It proclaimed a sustained, inland expedition deep into the heart of North America during the late Middle Ages. The immediate academic reaction was swift and harsh. The stone was declared a hoax, a clever forgery by a homesick Scandinavian farmer. Linguists pointed to the runes themselves, arguing that some characters were anachronistic, a mix of styles from different periods that no genuine 14th century carver would have used. They claimed the language was not Old Norse but a modern Scandinavian dialect, suggesting the text was invented in the 1800s. For decades, the stone was an embarrassment, a pariah of American archaeology. But the story refused to die. In the latter half of the 20th century, geologists took a closer look not at the language but at the stone itself. They used microscopic analysis to study the weathering within the carved grooves. What they found was a powerful argument for its antiquity. The inscription showed evidence of extensive, deep weathering, with mineral deposits and lichen growth that experts argued would have required not decades, but at least 500 or 600 years to form. This physical evidence directly contradicted the idea that Öhman had carved it himself. The debate over the Kensington Runestone is a perfect microcosm of the conflict that surrounds so many out-of-place artifacts. It pits the strict, text-based analysis of linguists against the physical, chemical evidence provided by geologists. Which do you trust more, the story told by the symbols or the story told by the stone? The runestone forces a difficult question. Could a simple farmer with no formal education in ancient languages have concocted such a detailed and historically plausible narrative, and then possessed the geological knowledge to fake centuries of weathering so perfectly that it would fool modern scientists? Or does this heavy, weathered slab truly mark the grave of Norse explorers who ventured further into the New World than we ever imagined, their desperate message waiting in the soil for 600 years? It stands as a silent, stubborn witness, challenging us to decide whether our current historical narrative is complete, or if we are simply unwilling to read the writing on the stone. Deep within a coal mine in Wolfsegg, Austria, miners in 1885 split open a solid block of coal and found a perfect cube of iron staring back at them. This was not a lump of ore or a random nugget. It was a sharply defined object with distinct edges and grooves, seemingly crafted by an intelligent hand. The coal seemed itself dated to the Tertiary period, an epoch spanning millions of years and ending long before the first humans are said to have walked the earth. The Wolfsegg iron, as it became known, was immediately a profound enigma. Here was an object of apparent manufacture, locked away in a geological vault that should have contained only the remnants of primeval forests and ancient life. Analysis revealed it was made of wrought iron, a material that requires smelting and forging, and it was peculiarly pure, lacking the sulfur that would typically be found in iron from that region. This specific composition fueled the debate. Was it a meteorite, a natural lump of nickel iron from space that just happened to fracture into a geometric shape? Skeptics clung to this explanation, suggesting the cube's form was a fascinating geological coincidence, but its sharp, symmetrical edges and the clear, manufactured-looking groove running around its center made that conclusion feel strange to many who examined it. If this was a natural formation, it was a masterpiece of mimicry. The very existence of the Wolfsegg iron forces a difficult question about deep time. Could an industrial civilization have risen and fallen on this planet millions of years before our own, leaving behind only the rarest, most durable fragments of its technology, fragments we occasionally stumble upon in the fossil fuel that powered their world? Or does its presence hint at something even more unsettling, that our definitions of what is natural and what is artificial are far too narrow? This small, heavy cube does not merely challenge a single date in a history book. It cubes our entire understanding of time, progress, and the very nature of evidence. It is a metallic whisper from an age of giants, real or imagined, compelling us to look at every layer of the earth with fresh and deeply questioning eyes. Soaring over the arid plains of Peru, the true scale of the Nazca Lines becomes terrifyingly clear. From the ground, they are nothing but shallow grooves in the desert floor, but from the air, they transform into a sprawling gallery of colossal art. Gigantic spiders, hummingbirds with wings outstretched, a monkey with an intricately coiled tail, and perfect geometric shapes stretch across nearly 200 square miles of desert. Some of these figures are over 1,200 feet long, so immense that they can only be fully comprehended from an altitude no human of that era could have possibly achieved. Created by the Nazca culture over a 1,000-year period beginning around 500 years before the Common Era, these geoglyphs were made by simply removing the dark, sun-baked surface pebbles to reveal the lighter-colored sand beneath. The mystery is not how they were made, but why they were made with such staggering precision for an audience that could not see them. How did the creators, working without the benefit of flight or modern tools, achieve such perfect proportions and straight lines that run for miles over uneven terrain? The answer lies in a mastery of surveying and mathematics that seems almost supernatural. Researchers have demonstrated that the Nazca people could have used simple stakes and ropes to plot out these enormous designs, scaling them up from smaller models through an intricate, coordinated effort. The dry, windless climate of the Nazca Desert has acted as a perfect preservative, keeping these fragile lines intact for 2 millennia. But this practical explanation only deepens the central question of purpose. Were they a massive astronomical calendar, aligning with celestial events to mark the seasons for agriculture? Were they sacred pathways walked by priests during rituals to petition the gods for water in one of the driest places on Earth? The most tantalizing and controversial theory suggests the Nazca possessed the secret of flight. perhaps using primitive hot air balloons made from locally available textiles to oversee their work. While experimental archaeology has shown this is technically possible, no direct evidence for Nazca balloons has ever been found. This absence fuels the most famous speculation of all, that the lines were landing strips or signals for ancient astronauts. This idea, while captivating, overlooks the profound human achievement the lines represent. They are not a message for extraterrestrials, but perhaps a message from an ancient people to their gods, a testament to their desire to create something so monumental it would forever etch their presence into the very skin of the earth. The Nazca Lines challenge our perception of ancient capability, forcing us to see a landscape not as a blank slate, but as a canvas for ambitions that reached for the heavens long before the invention of the airplane. Scattered across the jungles of Costa Rica, hundreds of stone spheres lie as if abandoned by giants. These are the Diquís Spheres, ranging in size from a small melon to colossal orbs over 8 feet in diameter and weighing more than 15 tons. Carved by pre-Columbian peoples between the years 300 and 1500 of the Common Era, their near-perfect geometry is startling. Without metal tools, using only stone hammers and an immense amount of patience, these ancient artisans shaped hard granodiorite boulders into forms of breathtaking spherical precision. How did they achieve such mathematical perfection, and for what possible purpose? The spheres were found in mysterious arrangements, often grouped in lines, triangles, or great parabolic curves. This deliberate placement has led to theories that they were a massive astronomical calendar, aligned with constellations or solstice events to guide agricultural cycles. Other researchers believe they were symbols of power and status, the ancient equivalent of a king's crown, marking the territories of powerful chieftains. Perhaps they were even sacred objects representing the sun, the moon, or the cosmic egg of creation myths. The true answer is lost to the jungle. The sheer effort involved in their creation and placement is a puzzle in itself. Why would a society living in a challenging, remote environment dedicate generations of labor to quarrying, shaping, and moving these immense stones across miles of rugged terrain? This was not a project born of necessity, but one of profound cultural or spiritual importance. Their priorities were clearly different from our own, focused on creating a legacy in stone rather than on mere survival. The spheres stand as monuments to a different kind of intelligence, one that valued cosmic harmony and left behind a silent, monumental puzzle for us to ponder. Their perfect forms do not simply represent skill. They are a challenge to our modern assumptions about what ancient societies were capable of achieving and what they deemed truly important enough to carve into the very heart of the earth. The Voynich Manuscript is a book that refuses to be read. Housed at Yale University, this small, unassuming codex from the early 15th century is arguably the world's most famous cipher. Its 240 vellum pages are filled from edge to edge with an unknown script, a flowing handwriting that uses characters seen nowhere else on Earth. This text is not the only mystery. It is accompanied by a gallery of the bizarre, intricate illustrations of plants that do not exist, naked women bathing in strange green fluid, and celestial charts of constellations unknown to any culture. For over a century, this book has been a siren call to the world's top cryptographers, linguists, and mathematicians, all of whom have failed to crack its code. Military codebreakers from both world wars, who successfully unraveled complex enemy communications, turned their skills to the Voynich and walked away baffled. In the 21st century, sophisticated artificial intelligence has been deployed, analyzing letter patterns and word frequencies in an attempt to find a statistical foothold. The AI can identify the manuscript's underlying structure, confirming it is not random gibberish, but it cannot tell us what any of it means. The very paper and ink are mundane, carbon dated to the early 1400s, which only deepens the central paradox. Why would someone go to the immense expense of preparing vellum and spending months, perhaps years, meticulously writing and drawing a book of pure nonsense? The hoax theory is tempting, suggesting a clever forger like Edward Kelly created it to sell a worthless treasure to a wealthy patron like Rudolph II. Yet, the statistical properties of the text are consistent with a genuine, structured language, not the random scribbles of a con artist. This leads to the more profound possibility that the Voynich Manuscript is a genuine artifact from a culture whose knowledge and language have been completely erased from history. It could be a treatise on a lost system of botany and medicine, a visual encyclopedia of a world we no longer recognize. Its pages are a silent library, filled with information we can see but cannot understand, a permanent question mark written in a language that may now have no living speaker. This book is the ultimate symbol of the historical unknown, a physical reminder that there are chapters in the human story so thoroughly lost that we cannot even read their titles. Within a dark chamber of the Hathor Temple at Dendera, a stone relief glows with a different kind of mystery. Carved during the Ptolemaic period around 100 years before the Common Era, this intricate scene seems to show something that should not exist in ancient Egypt. It depicts a large, bulbous object, unmistakably shaped like a modern glass vessel. Inside this enclosure, a snake extends its body in a wavy line, its head touching the end of a cable that connects to a box held by a priest. Another figure stands nearby, as if operating the strange device. To any contemporary eye, the resemblance to a colossal light bulb is startling and immediate. The entire assembly looks less like a religious icon and more like a diagram from an electrical manual. Egyptologists have a firm and established explanation for this imagery. They identify the bulb as a lotus flower, a powerful symbol of creation from which a serpent is emerging. The box is interpreted as the womb of the goddess, and the entire tableau is read as a mythological representation of the cosmic snake's journey, a story of birth and regeneration. In this view, the scene is purely symbolic, a spiritual metaphor carved in stone. Yet, the precision of the depiction gives pause. Why does the lotus so perfectly resemble a transparent vessel? And why is the serpent held in such a rigid, filament-like position, connected by such distinct, cable-like lines to a supporting apparatus? The theory that this could represent functional electrical lighting, powered by a device like the Baghdad Battery, is irresistible to many. The idea is not that the Egyptians had a modern electrical grid, but that they may have possessed a form of ritual or practical lighting technology, a secret knowledge reserved for the inner sanctums of their temples. This interpretation transforms the dark, windowless halls of Egyptian tombs and temples. Could the artists who painted in these pitch-black chambers have been guided by more than just flickering torches, which would have left telltale soot residues on the ceilings, residues that are largely absent in many perfectly preserved sites? Enthusiasts have taken the carving as a literal blueprint, using materials available in antiquity, such as copper, bronze, and simple acidic electrolytes. They have constructed working models based on the Dendera relief. In several experiments, these replicas have produced a faint but undeniable glow, a cold light emanating from the snake filament inside the sealed vessel. This does not prove the Egyptians had light bulbs, but it demonstrates that the concept illustrated on the wall is not physically impossible. The Dendera Light ultimately illuminates a fundamental conflict in how we view the past. Do we see ancient art solely through the lens of myth and symbol, Or do we allow for the possibility that some of these symbols were also precise records of advanced, forgotten sciences? This single carving forces us to question whether we have underestimated the literal meaning behind the sacred images of a civilization that never wrote a technical manual, but perhaps left their blueprints on the walls of their most holy places. Perched high on a coastal cliff in the ancient Mayan city of Cholum, a figure carved from coral stone stares out across the Caribbean Sea. Its form is utterly humanoid, yet its attire is a shock to the modern eye. This is not a typical depiction of a god or a king. The being wears a close-fitting suit, a bulky helmet that completely encloses its head, and what appears to be a complex breathing apparatus on its chest, complete with detailed straps and a distinct visor. Dated to between the 12th and 15th centuries, this Cholum coral sculpture stands in stark contrast to the more traditional art surrounding it. Archaeologists have a conventional explanation for this enigmatic figure. They identify it as a representation of the bee god, Amusun Kab, a deity crucial to the Maya for honey production and pollination. In this interpretation, the helmet is a stylized beehive, and the straps are merely decorative elements common to Mayan iconography. Others suggest it shows a shaman wearing a ritual mask, perhaps for a ceremony involving hallucinogenic substances to commune with the spirit world. These are logical, grounded explanations that fit within our understanding of Mayan culture. Yet, the visceral, immediate reaction upon seeing the sculpture is one of futuristic recognition. The helmet is not abstract, it is a perfect sphere with a pronounced rim, looking less like a hive and more like a sealed environmental suit. The apparatus on the chest, with its clear central port and flanking tubes, bears an uncanny resemblance to a breathing unit, the kind a deep sea diver or an astronaut would require. This is where the artifact launches us into a realm of profound speculation. If we set aside the established interpretations for a moment, what other phenomenon could an ancient artist be attempting to record? Could it be a stylized memory of a rare but natural event, like a diver from a distant, more advanced culture encountered on the shores? Or does it represent something more profound, a prophetic vision granted to a shaman, a glimpse of humanity's future among the stars, interpreted through the only visual language they possessed? The sculpture's location is as significant as its form. It was found in a temple overlooking the vast, open ocean, a place where the horizon stretches to infinity. This was a civilization deeply connected to the cycles of the earth and sky, meticulously observing the planets and stars. Is it so impossible that they might also have looked to the sea and the heavens and wondered what, or who, else might be out there? The Cholum figure does not provide answers, but it asks a powerful question about the nature of inspiration itself. It stands as a silent sentinel on the border between our terrestrial past and a future we are only now beginning to reach for, a permanent monument to the enduring human urge to give form to the extraordinary, no matter how far beyond understanding it may seem. Beneath the clear blue waters off Japan's southernmost island, a massive stone structure sleeps on the seafloor. Discovered by a local diver in 1986, the Yonaguni Monument is a colossal formation of sandstone that plunges straight down for nearly 80 feet. Its sheer faces are carved with what look like perfect terraces, sharp-edged steps, and wide, level platforms. One towering pillar appears to have been positioned to withstand the immense pressure of earthquakes, and several surfaces bear markings that uncannily resemble crude human faces and animal forms. The entire complex covers an area larger than a football field, a sunken citadel standing in silent defiance against the ocean currents. The moment you see it, the central question is unavoidable. Is this the work of nature's random hand, or the blueprint of a forgotten human mind? The debate that erupted after its discovery has divided geologists and archaeologists for decades. On one side, prominent figures like Professor Masaaki Kimura of the University of the Ryukyus have spent years mapping the site, insisting it is unmistakably artificial. He points to the relentless 90-degree angles between walls and floors, the perfectly circular holes that look like post holes, and the symmetrical staircases with steps of uniform height. These are features, he argues, that natural erosion simply does not produce with such consistency. The most compelling evidence may be two massive, monolithic pillars that sit close to the main structure. They are not part of the bedrock but appear to have been placed there, standing like silent sentinels guarding a sunken palace. If Professor Kimura is correct, the implications are staggering. The monument had to have been built when this area was above sea level, which dates it to at least 10,000 years ago, a time when humanity was supposedly in the midst of the Stone Age. This would place its construction thousands of years before the Great Pyramids of Egypt, suggesting a sophisticated, seafaring culture in prehistoric Japan that possessed the engineering skill to shape entire landscapes. The skeptics, led by geologist Robert Schoch, offer a powerful counter-argument. They explain that the sandstone in this region is naturally fractured along right angles and flat plains. The relentless forces of tectonic activity, they say, can easily create the monument's seemingly artificial features through natural splitting and shearing. The underwater currents laden with sand act like a constant sandblaster, sharpening these natural fractures into clean, stepped formations over millions of years. What we see as a carved face or an animal, they contend, is simply pareidolia, the human brain's innate tendency to see familiar patterns in random shapes. This geological explanation is elegant and fits within the known processes of our planet, requiring no lost civilizations. Yet, even with this rational view, the monument refuses to surrender all its secrets. Why do so many of the right-angled features cluster in one specific, complex location, while the surrounding seabed is far more chaotic and natural in appearance? The presence of what looks like a carved relief of a tortoise and a human face, while subjective, adds a layer of profound intrigue that pure geology struggles to dismiss entirely. Yonaguni dives us into the very heart of the out-of-place artifact dilemma, forcing a choice between two compelling narratives. Do we see a masterpiece of natural sculpture, a breathtaking coincidence of rock and water? Or are we looking at the drowned ruins of a world that vanished when the last ice age ended, a silent city that sank beneath the rising waves, taking its builders and their history into the abyss? This underwater enigma is a direct challenge not just to our timeline, but to our very definition of what is possible in the deep, forgotten chapters of the human story. Golden objects from a Colombian riverbed seem to defy the very laws of history. Crafted by the Quimbaya civilization between 1000 and 1500 of the Common Era, these small, intricate artifacts were long catalogued by museums as stylized birds, insects, or even fish. But to a modern eye, their forms are shockingly familiar. They possess sleek fuselages, distinct cockpits, and most strikingly, delta-shaped wings with perfectly horizontal stabilizers on their tails, features that are utterly non-functional for any living creature, but absolutely essential for stable, high-speed flight. The resemblance to modern jet aircraft is so uncanny it feels intentional. This visual paradox launched a series of remarkable experiments, aerospace engineers and enthusiasts taking the artifacts not as religious symbols but as potential models, constructed precise, scaled-up versions. When these replicas were fitted with motors and launched, something incredible happened. Several of the designs did not just fall from the sky, they flew. They demonstrated stable aerodynamic properties, gliding through the air with an ease that straightforward representations of animals simply would not possess. This practical test suggests the original artisans were capturing more than just a natural form. They were perhaps replicating a shape they knew was inherently airworthy. Of course, the mainstream archaeological interpretation remains firm. Scholars point to the abundant zoomorphic art of the region, arguing these are clearly stylized depictions of birds or bees, their forms abstracted by artistic convention. They see the horizontal tail as a stylized bird's tail or the legs of an insect, and they emphasize that gold for the Quimbaya held profound spiritual significance, used for offerings to the gods, not for drafting engineering schematics. To them, the flight capability is a fascinating coincidence, a happy accident of form that resonates with our own technological era. Yet, the coincidence is a powerful one. If these are merely insects, why do they lack the multiple legs and antennae so common in other indigenous art? If they are birds, why the rigid, triangular wings and the unmistakable vertical and horizontal stabilizers, features that serve no purpose in biological flight but are fundamental to mechanical aviation? The artifacts force us to confront the nature of inspiration itself. What was the original spark for these designs? Could the Quimbaya have observed a natural phenomenon so rare it left no other trace? Or does this represent a fragment of lost knowledge, an intuitive grasp of principles that would not be formally understood for centuries? These golden objects hover in a space between worlds, neither clearly animal nor clearly machine. They are a shimmering enigma, suggesting that the line between ancient artistry and forgotten science is far thinner and far more mysterious than we ever supposed. The ruins of Mohenjo-Daro tell a story of a city frozen in a single cataclysmic moment. Unearthed in modern-day Pakistan, this metropolis of the ancient Indus Valley civilization was a marvel of its time, boasting sophisticated urban planning, advanced drainage systems, and a society of remarkable order. Yet around 1900 years before the Common Era, this bustling center of life met a sudden and terrifying end. The archaeological layer reveals a scene of absolute devastation, with skeletons scattered in the streets, some found in positions suggesting they died instantly, caught in the midst of everyday activity. But it is the physical state of the city itself that presents the deepest mystery. Entire sections of the ruins show bricks and stone blocks that have been fused together, vitrified into a glassy slag, a transformation that requires temperatures so intense they are typically associated with volcanic eruptions or modern industrial furnaces. This kind of vitrification is not caused by ordinary fire. Mainstream archaeology has long pointed to a more conventional demise, suggesting the city was sacked by Aryan invaders or destroyed by a sudden, massive flood. Yet these explanations struggle to account for the localized, high-heat evidence that points to something far more extreme. The discovery of skeletons with radiation levels significantly higher than normal has fueled the most controversial theories. Some researchers have proposed the city was the epicenter of an ancient nuclear explosion, either from a weapon used in a forgotten war between advanced civilizations, or from a catastrophic cosmic impact that delivered a thermal blast rivaling an atomic detonation. The idea of a prehistoric atomic war is, of course, a radical departure from everything we understand about the timeline of human technology. It suggests a cycle of civilization where knowledge of such horrific power was gained, wielded, and then utterly lost. The haunting silence of Mohenjo-Daro's ruins forces us to confront a difficult question. Is the physical evidence we see the result of a natural event we have yet to fully comprehend? Or is it a grim warning from the past, a testament to a level of technological sophistication that ended in self-destruction? This city does not just represent a fallen civilization, it stands as a monument to a potential truth we may be unwilling to face, that human progress is not always a straight line upward, but a spiral that can sometimes lead back to ash and glass. Perfection in stone can feel both ancient and alien. The walls of Sacsayhuamán fortress in Peru are a breathtaking display of this paradox, a sprawling complex of limestone blocks so immense they seem to have been placed by giants. Constructed by the Inca in the 15th century, these are not simple stacked stones. Each block is a unique, irregular polygon, some weighing more than 100 tons, yet they fit together with a precision that defies logic. The joints between them are so seamless that for centuries, locals have said not even a razor blade can be inserted between the stones. This is not an exaggeration. Modern visitors confirm the impossible tightness of these multi-ton puzzles. All of this was accomplished without mortar, without the wheel, and without any iron tools that we know of. The Inca had only stone, bronze, and wood at their disposal, materials seemingly inadequate for such a monumental and precise task. The walls curve and zigzag across the landscape, a design that is not merely aesthetic. This brilliant, interlocking pattern is the very reason the structure has survived centuries of violent earthquakes that have leveled much of the modern city of Cusco in the valley below. While rigid, straight walls would crack and collapse, the zigzag design and the flexible, jigsaw-like joints allow the entire wall to sway and settle as a single, unified mass during tremors, a profound understanding of seismic engineering that we are only now fully appreciating. How could a culture achieve such mastery over stone, moving these colossal blocks from quarries miles away and shaping them with such inhuman accuracy? The mainstream explanation points to immense manpower, using thousands of workers to haul the stones on ropes and logs, and then patiently grinding the surfaces together with sand and water over many years. Yet even this practical theory feels incomplete when confronted with the sheer perfection of the fit, a perfection that would be challenging to replicate even with our most advanced digital machining tools today. This gap in understanding has fueled more speculative ideas, suggesting the Inca possessed a lost technology, perhaps a plant-based solvent that could temporarily soften stone to a clay-like consistency, allowing them to mold it into place. Others, looking at the superhuman scale and precision, have pointed to more controversial sources for this knowledge. The walls stand silent and immovable, refusing to give up their secret. They are a permanent testament to a skill so advanced it appears to be magic, a reminder that the past may hold answers to engineering problems we are still struggling to solve. Their silent gaze holds a question that has echoed for centuries. On the most isolated inhabited island on Earth, the Easter Island Moai stand as monumental testaments to human ambition. Carved from compressed volcanic ash by the Rapa Nui people between 1250 and 1500 of the Common Era, these colossal heads and torsos are not merely statues, they are giants. Some weigh as much as 82 tons and stand over 30 feet tall, their stern, elongated faces turned not toward the sea, but inland, watching over the clans that created them. The immediate and overwhelming question is how? How did a people with no wheels, no metal tools, and no large animals to provide draft power move these behemoths miles across rugged terrain from the quarry to their final ceremonial platforms? The answer is a masterpiece of simple physics and immense human effort. Researchers have demonstrated that a surprisingly small team could walk the statues upright in a rocking motion, using a system of ropes to rock and pull the moai forward in a process that resembled a coordinated walk. This method, while effective, would have required the precise coordination of hundreds of people for a single statue, a communal effort that must have defined the very fabric of their society. But the transportation is only half the puzzle. The purpose of these immense figures remains a subject of intense debate. Were they representations of powerful ancestral chiefs, their supernatural mana protecting the community from beyond the grave? Or were they territorial markers, symbols of clan power and prestige in a landscape with limited resources? This question of purpose is forever tied to the island's tragic ecological collapse. The same society that achieved this staggering engineering feat eventually descended into warfare and collapse. Evidence suggests the island was once covered in a lush palm forest, but the trees were steadily cleared, likely for logs to roll the statues and for canoes and shelter. As the resources vanished, the society fractured. The statues, once symbols of unity and power, were toppled in internecine conflict. The mystery deepens with the island's undeciphered Rongorongo script, a unique form of writing that no one has been able to read, locking away the Rapa Nui's own history. And then there are the theories of outside contact, with some researchers pointing to the presence of sweet potatoes, a South American crop, as evidence of pre-European transoceanic voyages. The Moai do not give us easy answers. They stand or lie fallen as a profound lesson in the delicate balance between human achievement and environmental limits. They are a haunting reminder that even the grandest of civilizations, isolated and left to its own devices, can reach for the sky while standing on ground that is slowly turning to dust. A monument for a future that may never arrive stood quietly in a Georgia field. The Georgia Guidestones were not ancient, erected in 1980, but they carried the weight of an eternal mystery. This granite structure, often called America's Stonehenge, was composed of 6 massive slabs inscribed with a message for humanity in 8 of the world's most prominent languages. Its 10 directives carved into the stone were a stark blueprint for a post-crisis world, calling for a global population of 500 million, a careful balance between people and nature, and the guidance of reproduction to improve fitness and diversity. The Guidestones were also a precise astronomical instrument, with features carefully aligned to track the sun's movement and mark the solstices and equinoxes, echoing the celestial knowledge of civilizations long past. Yet the identity of the individuals who commissioned this massive project remains a complete secret. The monument was paid for by a man using the pseudonym R.C. Christian, who claimed to represent a group of loyal Americans, their true motives and affiliations forever hidden. This shroud of anonymity, combined with the monument's stark and somewhat chilling prescriptions for humanity's future, ignited a firestorm of speculation. Were they the work of a secret society laying the groundwork for a new world order, a futurist group attempting to seed ideas for a coming ecological apocalypse, or simply the eccentric passion project of a wealthy idealist? The Guidestones became a modern out-of-place artifact, a strange fusion of ancient megalithic tradition and contemporary existential fears, standing outside of time and context. Their physical existence was cut short when they were demolished in a bombing in 2022, but their controversial legacy is far from erased. The messages they carved into the granite and the profound questions they raised about control, survival, and who gets to plan for the future continue to provoke intense debate and unease, a ghost of a possible tomorrow that haunts our present. The silent giants of Easter Island are not the only mystery carved by the Rapa Nui. Alongside the fallen Moai, another enigma was discovered in the 19th century. Wooden tablets covered from edge to edge in a script unlike any other. These are the Rongorongo Tablets, and their glyphs form a language that has stubbornly resisted every attempt at translation for over a century. The symbols themselves are beautifully intricate, depicting stylized human figures, birds, fish, and geometric shapes, all arranged in a pattern that reads from left to right on one line, then upside down on the next, a method called reverse boustrophedon. This structured, repetitive pattern is the hallmark of a true written language, not random decoration. It suggests a sophisticated system for recording information, yet we have no Rosetta Stone to crack its code. The implications of this are staggering. If Rongorongo is a genuine written language, it would be one of the very few independently invented in all of human history, placing the remote Rapa Nui people in the same rare category as the Sumerians or the Maya. How could such a complex system develop in absolute isolation on the most remote inhabited island on the planet? The dating is equally perplexing, with some estimates suggesting the script may have emerged as early as the 1300s, long before European contact. This timeline creates a profound puzzle. Did the Rapa Nui genius for monumental sculpture extend to the even more monumental achievement of inventing writing entirely on their own, a cultural explosion in the middle of the Pacific? Or does the existence of Rongorongo hint at a forgotten chapter of transoceanic travel, a visit from unknown seafarers who brought the concept of writing with them, a concept the islanders then adapted into their own unique form? The content of the tablets is the greatest loss. They could be anything: historical records naming the chiefs who commissioned the great statues, genealogies tracing family lineages back generations, complex myths explaining the creation of their world, or even precise astronomical charts for navigating the vast ocean or tracking the seasons. Without the key, we are left staring at a locked library. The tragedy is that the knowledge was almost certainly lost in the same ecological and social collapse that toppled the Moe. By the time European missionaries arrived in the 1860s, there was seemingly no one left who could read the script. The few elders who might have held the knowledge were gone, and the missionaries, viewing the tablets as pagan artifacts, encouraged their destruction. Most of the tablets were burned, leaving only 24 fragile survivors. Today, these remaining tablets are scattered in museums around the world, their silent glyphs holding the entire intellectual history of a lost civilization. They are a permanent question, a story written in a language we can see but cannot understand, a haunting reminder that a world of knowledge can vanish in the space of a single generation. The Göbekli Tepe pillars stand as a monumental question carved in stone. In the dry hills of southeastern Turkey, a structure was uncovered that did not just push back the clock on civilization, it shattered it entirely. This complex of massive, T-shaped limestone pillars arranged in great stone circles dates to 9,600 years before the Common Era, a staggering 6,000 years older than Stonehenge. The sheer scale is breathtaking, with some of the pillars weighing over 20 tons and standing nearly 20 feet tall. Each one is a masterpiece of Neolithic artistry, covered in finely carved reliefs of animals, foxes, scorpions, lions, and vultures, alongside mysterious abstract symbols. The most profound mystery, however, is not the art itself, but the people who created it. According to everything we thought we knew, the builders should have been simple, nomadic hunter-gatherers, living a hand-to-mouth existence focused solely on survival. They should not have possessed the sophisticated social organization, the advanced stone working skills, or the astronomical knowledge required to envision and erect such a colossal project. Göbekli Tepe turns the traditional narrative of human progress completely on its head. For decades, the accepted story was that the invention of agriculture came first. The stability of farming, the theory went, allowed for surplus food, which in turn led to settled villages, social stratification, and finally, the spare time and resources needed to build temples and develop complex religion. Göbekli Tepe demolishes this sequence. Here is the world's oldest known temple complex, built by people who were still hunting their food and gathering wild plants. This suggests a startling new possibility, that it was actually the human impulse to come together for ritual and worship that provided the catalyst for civilization. The need to build and maintain this sacred site may have been the very reason people first settled down, experimenting with cultivating the wild grasses that grew around their holy place, effectively inventing agriculture as a side effect of their spiritual devotion. The sophistication of the site is not limited to its size. The pillars are precisely arranged with certain alignments pointing to the stars, suggesting their creators possessed a sophisticated understanding of the night sky, using it to mark solstices or other celestial events. Then, around 8,000 years before the Common Era, this breathtaking complex was not abandoned. It was deliberately and carefully buried. Someone filled the entire site with earth and stone, preserving it perfectly for 12,000 years but hiding its grandeur from the world. Why would a culture go to such immense effort to inter its most sacred place? Was it an act of reverence, sealing a holy ground that was no longer in use? Or was it an act of fear, an attempt to contain a power they could no longer control? The buried pillars of Göbekli Tepe do not offer easy answers. They stand as a silent, stubborn challenge, forcing us to admit that the dawn of human society was not a slow, predictable sunrise, but a flash of brilliant, organized genius in the deep and unexpected dark of our prehistoric past. Deep beneath the modern island of Malta, a different kind of monument waits in silence. The Hypogeum of Hal Saflieni is not built of stone, but carved directly into the living rock, a sprawling, three-level subterranean temple complex dating back over 5,000 years. This is not a tomb in the traditional sense, but a sanctuary, a labyrinth of chambers, halls, and niches that descend into the earth, all painted in the sacred red ochre of the ancient builders. Yet its most profound mystery is not something you can see, but something you can hear. In certain chambers, most notably the famous Oracle Room, sound behaves in a way that defies simple explanation. A single voice speaking or chanting at a specific pitch is not merely amplified, it is transformed. The sound resonates, filling the entire space with a powerful, bone-deep vibration that seems to come from everywhere at once. This is not a random echo, but a precise acoustic phenomenon. Researchers who have studied the hypogeum have found that these chambers are tuned to specific frequencies, particularly those within the range of the human male voice. The architecture itself acts as a giant sound filter and amplifier, a piece of Stone Age audio engineering of breathtaking sophistication. Why would a Neolithic culture without metal tools go to such extraordinary lengths to shape the very properties of sound within their most sacred space? Some researchers propose this was a technology of the spirit. The powerful vibrations, when experienced in a ritual context, could have altered brainwave patterns, inducing trance-like states in priests or shamans. This idea, known as acoustic archaeology, suggests that the builders of the hypogeum possessed a deep, intuitive understanding of psychoacoustics, the way sound affects the human mind and body. They may have been using these sonic vibrations for healing, for divination, or to facilitate communication with the divine. This concept finds a strange echo in modern science, in the field of cymatics, which studies how sound waves can shape matter, creating intricate geometric patterns in sand or water. The ancient Maltese might have understood that sound is a fundamental, shaping force of the universe, and they built a temple to harness its power. The hypogeum is more than a collection of old rooms. It is a resonant instrument, a stone tape recorder holding the ghost of a frequency. Its carefully engineered echoes suggest a civilization that did not just build with rock, but sculpted with vibration, creating a sacred space where the very air could be made to hum with power. This underground labyrinth challenges our perception of prehistoric people, presenting them not as primitive stoneworkers, but as masters of an invisible physics, architects of experience whose greatest works were meant not for the eye, but for the ear and the soul. A ceramic bowl resting near the shores of Lake Titicaca holds an inscription that should not exist there. Known as the Fuente Magna Bowl, this large stone vessel was discovered in Bolivia, its surface a chaotic blend of two worlds. Alongside local, recognizable symbols from ancient Andean cultures, the bowl is boldly carved with a script that is unmistakably Sumerian cuneiform, the wedge-shaped writing of Mesopotamia. Dated to around 3,000 years before the Common Era, this single artifact dares to suggest a connection that rewrites the map of the ancient world. It proposes that seafarers from the land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, the cradle of Western civilization, somehow crossed the vast Atlantic Ocean and made contact with the pre-Columbian peoples of South America. If this is true, it means that global exploration and cultural exchange occurred on a scale we never dreamed possible, millennia before the voyages of Columbus or the Vikings. The implications are staggering, pointing to a planet far more interconnected in deep antiquity than any textbook has ever allowed. The bowl itself is a physical metaphor for this fusion, a vessel containing the script of one civilization and the artistic soul of another, thousands of miles from their respective homes. Mainstream archaeology, however, remains deeply skeptical. Critics point to the bowl's vague discovery context, having been found by a farmer with no professional archaeological oversight, which leaves its provenance forever in doubt. They question the authenticity of the cuneiform, suggesting it could be a modern forgery, perhaps even an elaborate hoax carved in the 20th century to support alternative historical theories. The academic establishment largely dismisses it, seeing the bowl as an anomaly that cannot be verified and therefore cannot be accepted. Yet, for those who study it, the inscriptions are not random scratches. Epigraphers who have analyzed the symbols argue they form coherent phrases, including dedications to a Sumerian goddess, suggesting the bowl was a ritual object used in religious ceremonies. This level of linguistic detail would be extraordinarily difficult for a modern forger to replicate accurately. The Fuente Magna bowl thus becomes a perfect storm of historical conflict. It represents the ultimate clash between the diffusionist idea that cultures spread their influence across the globe through travel and contact, and the isolationist view that civilizations like those in Mesopotamia and the Americas developed entirely independently. Which story feels more incredible, that an ancient Sumerian ship, against all odds, completed a journey we thought impossible, or that two cultures on opposite sides of the world independently developed not only similar social structures, but also chose to inscribe the same writing system onto the same type of ritual object? This bowl does not offer a simple answer, but it pours a potent question into the cup of history, forcing us to wonder if the oceans were ever truly the barriers we believe them to be. The Mitchell-Hedges crystal skull appears to be a perfect artifact from a lost world. Its form, carved from a single block of clear quartz, is so lifelike and detailed that it seems to breathe, with its jawbone moving separately from the cranium in a feat of delicate engineering. For decades, this skull and others like it were presented as priceless pre-Columbian relics, mysterious creations of the Maya or the Aztecs, objects imbued with psychic power and esoteric knowledge. They were said to be capable of foretelling the future, healing the sick, and storing the memories of ancient priests. Their flawless surfaces, free of any microscopic scratch marks that would indicate hand tools, suggested a technology beyond our understanding. This was the story, a story of profound and magical antiquity. Then science looked closer. In the late 20th century, researchers subjected the skulls to rigorous analysis using high-powered microscopes. What they found was not the mark of ancient ritual, but the unmistakable signature of modern industry. The surfaces showed evidence of polishing with jeweler's rouge and minute parallel grooves that could only have been made by high-speed rotary wheels, tools that did not exist in the Americas before European contact. The geological source of the quartz itself was traced not to Mesoamerica, but to Brazil or Madagascar, regions with no known trade links to the ancient Maya. The evidence was overwhelming. The crystal skulls were not ancient artifacts at all. They were almost certainly manufactured in the 19th century in Germany, a center for the burgeoning crystal carving industry, likely created to satisfy a European fascination with the exotic and the occult. They were beautiful, masterful fakes, and yet their power did not vanish with this revelation. The skulls remain iconic, their allure undiminished. Why do these modern creations hold such a grip on our collective imagination? They tap into a deep and universal human desire, the longing for a tangible connection to a mystical past, for objects that prove the world is more mysterious than it appears. They are not relics of a lost civilization, but they have become artifacts of our own psyche, symbols of our endless fascination with the unknown. Their true magic lies not in any supernatural power, but in their perfect reflection of our own need for wonder, a need so strong it can transform a clever forgery into a legendary treasure. Even a stone can seem to defy logic, carving its own path across a desert floor. In the heart of Death Valley, the racetrack playa is a flat, dry lake bed so barren and silent it feels like another world. Here, the sailing stones perform their slow, silent ballet. These are not artifacts crafted by human hands, but heavy rocks, some weighing hundreds of pounds, that have traveled across the landscape, leaving long, meandering trails etched into the cracked mud behind them. For over a century, their movement was a complete enigma. With no witnesses and no obvious force to move them, theories ranged from the playful, like giant playful pranksters, to the paranormal, with suggestions of powerful magnetic fields or even alien intervention. These stones became natural OOPArts, phenomena so out of place in our understanding that they demanded a supernatural explanation. They were a perfect riddle, a puzzle written in the earth itself by an invisible hand. The solution, when it finally came, was as elegant as the mystery was profound. It required a perfect and very rare alignment of natural conditions. First, a shallow pool of water must form on the playa from winter rains. Then, on a cold desert night, this water must freeze into a thin, windowpane sheet of ice. When the sun returns, this vast sheet of ice begins to break up. Now, a gentle wind, just strong enough to catch the edges of the floating ice panels, provides the push. The ice sheets, sometimes only a few millimeters thick, act like miniature barges, nudging the heavy rocks across the slick, muddy surface at speeds almost too slow to perceive. The stones sail, leaving their elegant signatures in the soft earth before the water evaporates and the evidence vanishes, leaving only the trails to spark wonder. This solved mystery is a masterclass in scientific patience. Researchers had to wait and watch for years, even deploying time-lapse cameras and GPS trackers, before they finally captured the stones in motion. It proves that not every historical puzzle requires a lost civilization or forgotten technology. Some of the greatest enigmas are woven into the fabric of the natural world, waiting for the right moment and the right observer to reveal their secrets. Yet, even with the mechanics understood, the sailing stones have not lost their magic. To stand on that vast, flat plain and see those long, solitary trails stretching toward the horizon is to feel a sense of awe that transcends a simple scientific explanation. They remind us that the world is still full of subtle wonders, and that the line between a natural process and a supernatural event is often just a matter of perspective. Hidden beneath the murky waters of a Chinese pond, a submerged world waited for 2,000 years. In 1992, local farmers decided to pump a small pond dry, expecting to find a shallow basin. Instead, the receding water revealed a man-made opening, the entrance to an astonishing underground complex. This was the first glimpse of the Longyou Caves, a labyrinth of colossal hand-carved chambers spanning an area larger than 5 football fields. The sheer scale is almost incomprehensible, a subterranean city carved from solid sandstone. Walking into one of these caverns is like stepping into the belly of a granite whale. The ceilings soar to a height of nearly 100 feet, supported by massive, uniformly carved pillars that stand in perfect rows. Every single surface, from the vast walls to the high ceilings, is covered in a consistent pattern of parallel chisel marks, a signature of immense, organized labor. The precision is overwhelming, with corners meeting at perfect 90-degree angles and surfaces smoothed to a uniform finish, all achieved with simple iron tools. The first and most pressing question is, why? Why would any ancient society commit such a staggering amount of effort to carve out this immense space from the unforgiving stone? The most logical guess is that it was a quarry providing stone for a nearby city or monument. Yet this theory falls apart quickly. There is no evidence of the quarried stone itself, no massive piles of rubble, and no record of what was supposedly built with it. If it was a tomb like the Egyptian pyramids, where are the burial goods, the sarcophagi, the inscriptions? The chambers are utterly, eerily empty. If it was a ritual space, where are the altars, the religious iconography, the signs of ceremonial use? The caves are a blank slate, a purpose-built void. The acoustic properties of the rooms add another layer of mystery. In certain chambers, a whisper can travel with uncanny clarity from one side to the other, while in others, sound is swallowed by the stone. This suggests the builders possessed a sophisticated understanding of sound propagation, perhaps engineering the space to amplify specific frequencies for rituals or communications we can no longer conceive. The official historical records from the time, the Han Dynasty, are completely silent. There is not a single scroll, not one edict, that mentions the mobilization of the thousands of workers, the master engineers, or the immense resources such a project would have demanded. It is as if the entire endeavor was a state secret, or the work of a culture that existed outside of the official narrative. The Longyou Caves are not merely a missing piece of history, they are a gaping hole. They represent a level of ambition and coordination that we never attributed to that era, a lost chapter in the story of human engineering. Their silent, empty halls are not an absence of evidence, but evidence of a profound absence in our knowledge, a monument to an ambition whose name and purpose have been erased by time itself. A final whisper of ancient intelligence comes not from a grand temple, but from a humble grave in Romania. The Tărtăria Tablets were discovered in 1961, 3 small, unfired clay discs etched with a series of strange, angular symbols. They appear almost crude at first glance, but their age is what shatters convention. These tablets date to around 5,300 years before the Common Era, a staggering 7,000 years old. This makes them one of the oldest known forms of writing in the entire world, predating the famous cuneiform of Mesopotamia by over 1,000 years. Their very existence challenges a foundational pillar of history, the idea that complex writing was a unique invention of the Middle East that then spread to the rest of the globe. Here, in the heart of the Balkans, a people now known as the Vinča culture were scratching symbols into clay while the great civilizations of Sumer were still in their infancy. The symbols themselves are a locked door. They feature combinations of lines, angles, and pictographs that have resisted every attempt at translation. Are they a form of proto-writing, a system of sacred symbols or property marks that never evolved into a full language? Or do they represent a true, fully developed script, the language of a lost society whose voice has been completely silenced by time? Some researchers see them as ritual objects, perhaps prayers to forgotten gods or instructions for ceremonies. Others propose a more practical purpose, suggesting the marks are an early accounting system, tracking goods, livestock, or tributes in a society growing in complexity. The implications are profound. If the Tărtăria Tablets are indeed a form of writing, they suggest that the human drive to record information emerged independently in multiple places across the ancient world. Literacy was not a single, brilliant flash of genius in one river valley, but a spark that could ignite wherever human communities reached a certain level of social organization and abstract thought. This transforms our view of prehistoric Europe. It was not a dark, silent wilderness waiting for civilization to arrive from the east. It was a vibrant, innovative landscape where cultures were experimenting with the very building blocks of history itself, etching their identity into clay. These three small tablets carry an immense weight. They inscribe a new, more complex narrative for the dawn of written communication, a story with multiple authors across the globe. Their ancient marks are a powerful testament to a universal human impulse, the deep and abiding need to make a mark, to send a message across the centuries, to shout into the future, "We were here." These scattered objects form a pattern when viewed from a distance, a constellation of human genius and loss. What connects a complex Greek gearbox to a simple Baghdad jar, or a hammer in ancient rock to a crystal-clear skull? It is not merely their strangeness, but the profound themes they collectively whisper. Each one, regardless of its ultimate authenticity, speaks to an unyielding human drive to innovate, to reach beyond the known world using the tools and understanding available. This impulse seems to be a constant, whether it was a Greek engineer calculating eclipses or a Nazca artist scaling a hummingbird to a mile long. Yet these artifacts also scream of fragility. The Antikythera Mechanism stands as a solitary ghost, a single survivor of what was likely a whole tradition of technical knowledge that vanished without a trace. Our history is not a solid edifice, but a collection of fragments salvaged from a shipwreck, and we are left to guess at the size and shape of the original vessel. This forces a radical rethink of progress itself. We are taught a simple, linear story from stone tools to silicon chips. But what if history is not a straight line, but a spiral or even a series of cycles? What if civilizations rise, achieve wonders, and then fall, their greatest discoveries sinking into oblivion, only to be painfully rediscovered centuries or millennia later? The Baghdad Battery and the Aiud Wedge suggest that the spark of electricity, the secrets of advanced metallurgy, might have been kindled and extinguished more than once. This cyclical view of time challenges our modern arrogance, our belief that we are the pinnacle of all that has come before. It suggests we might be just one more chapter in a much longer, more mysterious story. Unraveling this story demands that we break down the walls between academic disciplines. The London Hammer is not just an archaeological puzzle, it is a geological one. The Voynich Manuscript is a linguistic enigma that now calls upon artificial intelligence. The truth about our past will not be found in a single textbook, but in the collaboration between the geologist's hammer, the physicist's spectrometer, and the historian's scroll. Ultimately, these objects hold up a mirror to our own deepest curiosities. They are not just about the past, they are about us. Why are we so captivated by a map that should not exist or a book that cannot be read? It is because they tap into fundamental questions about our origins and our destiny. Are we alone in the universe, or does the Cholum figure hint at something more? Did we build this world from scratch, or are we rediscovering a path laid down long ago? These artifacts are Rorschach tests in stone and metal, and what we see in them reveals our own hopes, our fears, and our insatiable need to find meaning in the dust of ages. Woven together, they create a tapestry far richer and more bewildering than any simple timeline. A story where human achievement is forever interwoven with enigma, urging us to look at every old stone with new eyes. From the intricate gears of the Antikythera Mechanism to the silent moai of Easter Island, these 31 spectacular artifacts form a single, undeniable message. History is not a closed book but a living story, its pages filled with gaps and startling surprises that demand we read with both wonder and humility. Each discovery, whether a hammer in million-year-old rock or a map of an ice-locked continent, chips away at the foundations of our certainty, forcing the boundaries of the possible to expand just a little more. We are reminded that the human narrative is not a straight, predictable line from primitive to advanced, but a complex tapestry woven with threads of genius, loss, and resilient curiosity. The writer Arthur C. Clarke once observed that the only way of discovering the limits of the possible is to venture a little way past them into the impossible. These artifacts are the footprints of those who ventured, the tangible proof of minds that dared to look past the horizon of their own time. They ask us not to simply accept the past as it is written, but to engage with it, to question it, and to feel the thrill of the unsolved. What does this collective mystery reveal about us? It speaks to an ingenuity that is timeless, a drive to understand our world that transcends any single era or culture. It also whispers a cautionary tale about the fragility of knowledge and the sobering reality that even the grandest of achievements can be swallowed by time, leaving behind only the most durable and puzzling of fragments. This journey through the impossible does not end here. Let it inspire your own curiosity. Which of these artifacts captured your imagination most profoundly? Was it the cosmic computer from a shipwreck, the silent library of the Voynich Manuscript, or the sunken city of Yonaguni? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you are eager to continue unraveling the past together, subscribe for more deep dives into the enigmas that shape our world. The next great mystery is waiting just beneath